Right, we are still on macroeconomics. Today we are going to be dealing with the financial market. Right? Dealing with the financial market. So what we basically talking, I think we spoke to a great extent about the goods market. Right? We spoke to a great extent about the goods market, and what's important about the goods market, just to give you a recap, is that diagram. For starters, we need to have an understanding. Let's see if I do have a picture of it close by here. Yes, this diagram here, which basically depicts the goods market. So we need to have an understanding, for starters, what's on the y-axis and what's on the x-axis. X-axis has that one which is representing income or the GDP, right? So which is the real GDP or the real income, all right? And then Z, we are talking about expenditure. But we are basically dealing with expenditure. And then under expenditure, you can have consumption expenditure. Then you can have investment, government expenditure, and you can also have net exports. Right? You can have those there. Then when you talk about consumption expenditure, this you can separate into two, right? Autonomous and then income induced. So we spoke about this in the last session. So when we talk about income induced, we are talking about the part of the household's consumption that is dependent on the household's income. Right? So meaning it has a relationship with income. So what kind of relationship is there? It's a positive relationship. Whenever the household's income goes up, we expect that the consumption is going to increase, all right? And then it's not going to be a one-to-one increase, right? It's not going to be a one-to-one increase. Why? Because of what we call the marginal propensity so not consume rest of we expect that it's gonna increase by all right. So it's gonna increase by less than a unit. All right. So that's the MPC. It's normally written as the MPC or a little c, a C in small letters, right? That's what is the marginal propensity to consume. All right, and then the other parts now. Okay, the other thing that would affect your income induced. All right, your income induced consumption is basically going to be made up of two components there, which is Y, C. Right? So what we're discussing now is the C part, which is your MPC part. The Y, again, there's something else that's going to affect your Y, because your Y there is actually your disposable income. Right? So your disposable income is your income minus your taxes. Right? That gives you your disposable income. So at the end of the day, you need to make up that adjustment there for your income. You need to make up adjustment for taxes on that income. All right, let me just reshare the document there. Sorry, I think my network was pretty bad. All right. But I have made an adjustment there. All right, and then the other part is the autonomous consumption, right? So on the autonomous consumption, you are basically dealing now with that part of consumption which is not influenced by your income, which is a constant, right? So that can be your consumption that is financed by previous savings or borrowings, right? It's autonomous, it's got nothing to do with your income. It's not going to be affected by your income. So whether your income increases or decreases, that autonomous consumption stays the same. All right. And then still on the autonomous parts now, on our diagram, the only other, on our diagrams, the all other expenditures there are going to be autonomous except for the one that I spoke about, which is income induced, right? But in our model, the rest of those are exogenous, so meaning they are autonomous, right? So which means the investment, the net exports are all gonna be autonomous. I'm just looking for the page now where we were, right? But it's basically just a recap there before we jump into what we are supposed to be doing today, right? So all these autonomous expenditures now basically cause a shift in that graph. It either goes up or it goes down depending on whether there's an increase or a decrease in those. So for example, if you look at your government expenditure, whenever your government expenditure increases, then we expect that, I think we're here. Whenever your government expenditure increases, we expect your graph or your Z curve, your consumption curve, your expenditure curve to go up, actually. And then when your government expenditure goes down, then we expect that one to go down, right? And then we also spoke about what we call the multiplier, right? The multiplier is 1 divided by the marginal propensity to save. Then what is the marginal propensity to save? It's going to be 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume, right? So whenever your marginal propensity to consume increases, what happens to your multiplier? The multiplier is supposed to increase as well. So that's what the model is about there. And then that's 45-degree line there. It's a line that runs in the middle there. It's a line of equilibrium, right? So it's the different, it shows the different points, right, where your Z is equal to Y, right, or your Y is equal to Z. That line there. So it's your various points of equilibrium there. So wherever your Z curve crosses that line, it's gonna be your equilibrium. So if you wanna go down there to the x-axis, it's gonna give you the equilibrium income there. So in that case there, it's your 1,000, right? Then if you wanna calculate the equilibrium income there, you can simply go to, say, the y-axis there, the corresponding value of the y-axis. Say you take your 200 there, you take that 200 and you multiply it, or you take that 200, you multiply it by the multiplier, it's gonna give you the equilibrium income. Or if you take that 200 and you divide it by your MPS, marginal propensity to save, it will basically give you the same amount. So if you take 200 there, for instance, so your MPC is the gradient of that line, so which is 8/10 or 80/100 there, which is 0.8. That's your marginal propensity to consume. So 1 minus your marginal propensity to consume is your marginal propensity to save, which is going to be 0.2. So if you take 200 divided by 0.2, it should give you 1,000 there. Or alternatively, you take that 0.2, you use it to find the multiplier. 1 divided by 0.2 is 5. Then 5 times 200 is going to be 1,000. So you can do the same with 220. You can do the same with the other one there, the one on top, which is 300, right? So before we conclude on this, what's happening there on that diagram is what we call a balanced budget. So a balanced budget is when you are increasing your government expenditure by the same amount with which you are increasing your taxes, right? So in other words, in this instance, if your government expenditure is increasing by 100, your taxes are going to be increasing by 100. So your taxes will also describe that an increase in your taxes is basically a contractionary fiscal policy there, right? But then what do your taxes affect? They affect, you already said your taxes are going to affect your disposable income. So hence we make that adjustment there with your MPC, which is that little c there. So the quickest way now to find the effect of the balanced budget, you basically take the increase, which is your G there, which is the government increase, expansionary portion there, 100. And then since we already know that our taxes are supposed to be a reduction, so an increase in your taxes is basically reducing your disposable income, but by the marginal propensity to consume. So it's gonna be your taxes, which is 100. Then you multiply that 100 there by your C, your marginal propensity to consume. So that's gonna be 0.8 times 100, which is basically 8. So the overall effect there, expansionary effect, is gonna be 100 minus 80, which is 20. So you take that 20, that's the 20 that you multiply by your MPC. Or sorry, your multiplier, which is 1 divided by MPS, right? To get the overall effect there. So the overall effect is still going to be 100. So that's what happens there with the multiplier effect, right? That's what basically happens. So, all right, so we are jumping now to, right, I don't think there's anything. So the trick there with your balanced budget, because you will obviously get this in the exam. So whenever they tell you that there's been a balanced budget, what's the effect on that? So you just look at the government spending. So if your government spending is increased by 100, then you know that the overall effect at the end of the day is going to be an increase of 100. It's just the same, right? That's one quick way of finding that out there. All right, but let's just jump now to the financial market. So we are done with the goods market. So you just need to know now what's endogenous and what's exogenous there in the goods market. So we just keep it at that there. All right, so with the financial market now, we are basically going to be looking at the demand for money, the quantity of money, and the monetary policy, right? Another very simple topic, or a very simple learning unit. All right, so obviously we need to know the difference between income, wealth, and money, right? It's very simple. They even ask this at third level economics, but it's very, very simple because they still ask it at first level economics, right? Meaning we should never at any point as economics student mistake these terms, right? We should never at any point mistake these terms. So remember, we have stock variables and then we have flow variables. So one of these is basically, or for the most part, we can have two of these being stock variables, right? I'm going to explain and qualify my explanations there, right? And then one of those being a flow variable. So a flow variable there is income, right? It's income. It's a flow variable. So just go and have a look again at what a stock variable and a flow variable is, right? Then wealth is a stock variable, right? You know how much you are worth, that we can calculate your wealth and we say this is your wealth at a given point in time, right? Same as money, right? The central bank will know how much stock of money we have in circulation, right? So in those circumstances, it's a stock variable, right? So we just need to be able to differentiate between those, right? But the functions of money, this is also first level, but it basically has those functions there, which is a medium of exchange, and then it serves as a unit of account. It's a store of value, and then it's a standard of deferred payment. So we just need to see those there. So here it's just worth mentioning there. We don't go into much detail on that. All right. And then we want to talk about reasons why people can demand money. So we had also started this on the last session. We had also started this. The reasons why people can demand money. So there can basically be three reasons why an individual can demand money, right? Number one, it can either be demanded for passive balances, right? This is for transactional purposes. If you are going to be demanding it for, sorry, not passive balances, but it's actually for active balances, right? It's supposed to be for active balances, this one here. So it's for transactional purposes. So which is for your day-to-day transactions, because you want to use money to buy this and that. So you're saying you're demanding that for active balances, right? And then the second one, of course, you have your demand for money for speculative purposes, so which is the one for passive balances there, right? And then Other than that, you can want to demand money for, say, precautionary reasons, right? You want to demand money for precautionary reasons, which is maybe you say, just in case something happens, then you want to keep a certain balance. But what I would want to point out here is, when we're dealing with this here, you need to be quite careful to understand that we are dealing here with the demand for money as an asset, right? As an asset. So we are assuming that you can only either keep your money as bonds or keep your money as money, right? That's what we are assuming. So hence, again, on the last session, if you go through the video, we're saying, particularly if you look at the demand for passive balances, which is the speculative demand for money, this one is basically going to have a negative relationship with the interest rates, right? Why so? Because we are saying you can either keep your money as money or you can keep your money as bonds, right? So those two there have got a negative relationship. Why so? Because once the interest rate is high, then you want to convert your balances, you want to convert your money into bonds so that it earns you the good interest that you get from that, right? So as opposed to when the interest rates are low. So when the interest rates are low, you basically wanna take your money and keep it as money, right? Doesn't have a problem there. So hence that negative relationship. And so it is given right there as an increase in interest rates shows or results in the passive demand for money going down, right? So that is what we are going to be seeing quite a lot of, especially in our multiple choice questions. We're going to be seeing a lot of that there. And then for active balances, which is active transactions there, for transactionary purposes, this one here on top, there's basically a positive relationship between your income and that MD, which is your demand for money. That's the one that we see there. All right, so we'll fast forward that, come to the diagram, right? So this diagram is the demand for money diagram. So we are basically putting the interest rates against the money, right? Against the money right there. So the demand for money is a negative relationship there. So that's the one that you see. So M there on the x-axis basically would represent the quantity of money, right? As we are going to see that later, right? So you can see now that when the interest rates increase, there's a movement along that curve there. There's a movement along that curve. So if the interest rates have moved there from 1 to 2, you can see your M has also moved from M1 to M2. So there's a reduction there, right? So which means consequently now we can conclude that when the demand for money is reducing, then your M is also reducing there, right? So in this module, we are basically dealing with what we call demand derived money, right? Demand derived money. So in other words, our quantity of money, which is our supply of money, is basically going to be determined there by the demand of money. All right. But that's not so important except to mention it, right? I'm sure you must have seen that in the assignment again. And then when we talk of shifts there, so a shift in any one of these curves that you see in economics is going to be caused by any factor that is outside of the model. So the biggest factor there that's outside of the model is the income, right? The income. So whenever your income increases, demand for money increases, but it's not going to be a movement along, but it's going to be a shift in that curve. So that's what you see. So which means whenever it goes down, its incomes go down, then we expect that that curve is going to move in the opposite direction there to the left. All right. So basically, these are the relationships there being summarized. So when your income goes down, your demand for money goes down. When your income goes up, your demand for money goes up. And then the interest rates go down, your demand for money goes up. When your interest rates go up, your demand for money goes down. So it's going down in favor of bonds, right? Keep that in mind. So we are treating money here as an asset, remember. So I did clarify also in the previous recording that money here should not be treated as you wanting an increase in your salary, right? This is not what we're talking about. We're basically saying you keeping your money as money. Let's say you won the lottery, right? So if once you won the lottery, your asset is money, right? You won R1 million, so you have money. So you can either keep that money as money, right? Either in your bank account, or you keep it even in your mattress, in your wardrobe. You can keep it there. But the bottom line is, once you are keeping it as cash, it's not gonna earn you an interest, right? So when we say what are the circumstances that drive you to keeping your money as cash, right? To keeping your money as cash. So I was once in an economy where there was hyperinflation, right? So what happens when there is hyperinflation? You don't want to keep your money. All right. There are circumstances that you need to look at, right? Say when there is hyperinflation. If you keep your money as money, it's gonna lose value. So meaning it's gonna be earning you a negative interest, right? It's gonna be earning you a negative interest. All right. So once it's earning you a negative interest, then really you can't keep it as money, right? Then you'd rather buy an asset where it doesn't lose value. So assuming that there are two assets now, then you can take it to the bond market, because when there is inflation, usually, like in our case now, because there is inflation, you can see that interest rates are going up, like the repo rate is going up. So meaning the bonds are paying you a very good interest, right? A very good return. So which means you'd rather take that money and not keep it as money, because it's gonna lose value. But what you do, you basically buy bonds and then you earn an interest. So that's how realistic this is here. All right. So these are the chain of events now, looking at the impact of the level of income on the demand for money, right? And then the eventual effect on the money supply, right? So whenever your Y increases, we already saw that your demand for money goes up. Then what happens to money? It also goes up, right? Your M goes up right there. All right. So it can basically be summarized in that diagram there. Right. So, but what about when there's a change in the interest rates? The interest rates are going down, the money demand is going up, and then the quantity of money is up as well. So looking at what's happening now, we already saw in the news that the interest rates have gone up. So you can pretty much say the interest rates there are going up. You expect that the demand for money is going down, and then the quantities of money is also going down. So that's the expectations there of what's happening now. All right, so this is basically what's being explained there. So what we are doing now is a contractionary fiscal policy. So which is those chain events there, the bottom one, which is the monetary contraction, right? That is what's happening there. So remember, we spoke about the fiscal policy. So on the monetary side, the Reserve Bank can influence the economy, right? Can influence the economy using the monetary policy, right? By influencing the quantity of money, right? By influencing the quantity of money. So how does that affect the economy? We are going to deal with that later, but basically it's going to affect the demand of the demand side of the economy, meaning, to sum it up, or whenever the money supply is high, the demand becomes high in the economy. So meaning consumption, spending is going to go high. So the effect is going to be the same as that of a monetary policy, right? That's basically going to be the same effect there. So whether it's expansionary or whether it's expansionary monetary policy or expansionary fiscal policy, the aim is the same, right? And then same with the contractionary there. But most of the time, whenever the Reserve Bank, like in our case, engages in a contractionary monetary policy, they are basically doing that to tone down the economy, right? They are basically doing that to reduce inflation, like in our case, by reducing the money supply there in the economy. So hoping that when that happens, people spending, you remember that part of the inflation can be caused by demand, right? Can be caused by demand. It's demand derived inflation. right? It's normally the what demand pull, right? Demand pull inflation. So whenever you want to take that down, then or the quickest way to take that down is to play around with interest rates. Just increase the interest rates, people's spending is gonna be low, right? Now people have been complaining about their bond payments. One of our students was complaining the other week about their car payments going up. So all that is a result of the interest rates being increased. So the demand for money is down. There just isn't enough money flowing around now, right? So that hopefully is gonna cause the prices to go down, right? Or rather the prices to stop increasing. All right, so let's leave that. So all that there is on the accommodation policy, right? So I'm just gonna leave that for you to work out. All right, learning unit number 4, the ISLM model. So now we wanna build a model now where we have in one diagram the goods market and the financial market, right? That's what we wanna build in one diagram. But first of all, we start off, I think, with the IS, right, which is the goods market. So it's basically the goods market against the interest rates. You wanna see the response there, right? And then we deal again with the financial market, which is gonna be the LM. So whenever we deal with L, know that we are dealing with money, right? We are dealing with money. All right, so what are the learning outcomes? We wanna use the ISLM model. So our assessments go big on this, right? Our assessments basically go big on this. So if there is one thing that we need to understand, this is it, right? But bear in mind that this is actually so easy that you can do. Okay, just give me a second. All right, so the learning unit outcomes here is number 1, we need to be able to use the ISLM model to explain in words and by means of chain of events and diagrams how the level of output and income is determined by the interaction between the goods market and the financial market. So I think we've already discussed that a little bit, right? But we're looking at it in isolation, right? But now we want to look at those together now, and then use again the ISLM module to explain in words and by means of chain of events and diagrams the impact of fiscal and the monetary policy on the level of output and income, right? Okay, so let's start off now with the IS relationship. Let's start off now with the IS relationship. All right, so recall that we were dealing with, when we're looking at the goods market, recall that when we're discussing investment, right, when we're dealing with investment was basically an exogenous variable, right? It was an exogenous variable there in that equation, meaning it was determined outside of that. But now we want to spend, because now we want to deal with investment in relation to interest rates, in relation to income. We want to see now, how does investment relate with those, right? How does investment spending basically relate with those, right? Why are we picking those? Because when we are going to be doing this IS model, we have on the one side income, right? And then we have on the other side interest rates, right? So what would be the effect now, or what would be the relationship between investment spending? Because we do know that investment spending, right? We do know that investment spending is part of the goods market, right? It basically is part of the goods market. But how is it related then with interest rates? And then how is it related again with the incomes? Right? So this is going to give us a clue now. Right. So once we've worked through this session now, we should be able to have the investment equation. All right. Then the impact of the level of income on investment spending, income and output on investment spending. What about interest rates? Again, the demand equation, equilibrium level of output, and then a description of the IS relationship there. Then the graphical derivation of the IS curve, and then the movement along the IS curve, and then what could cause shifts in that curve. All right, so what we did now on the investment equation, like we said, it was an exogenous variable there, so meaning it was not affected in that model either by spending on the one side or by income, right? That was the assumption there. All right, so this is it. So by arguing that investment spending is a positive function on the level of output and income and a negative function of interest rate, this is what it becomes now. So what's the logic behind that? So the logic behind that now is every time your companies make profits, right? Every time your companies make profits, that's a rise in income, right? What happens to investment? So when we talk of investments in economics, remember in the previous sessions we were saying investments basically talk about the purchasing of capital equipment, right? Like the way you would invest in, in your organization by trying to increase output level, right? What would you do? You probably maybe purchase more equipment, etc. That's the kind of investment that we are talking about there, right? The purchasing of land and what have you. So that's the investment that we're talking about. So whenever the output is high, you realize that investment becomes high as well, because we are saying we have a lot now, a lot of income is available, a lot of money, a lot of funds are available. So we can basically take those and reinvest in the organization in the form of capital, right? So we refer to that as investment, right? That's the investment that we're talking about. So at the end of the day, whenever your incomes increase, your investments are also going to be expected to increase. So hence, there is a positive relationship there, right? But what about the interest rates? We already spoke about this. There has to be a negative relationship between those. So whenever the interest rates are high, right, what we expect our investment spending to be, we expect it to be low, right? There's a negative relationship there. Why so? Because remember now, we are talking from the perspective of, say, companies, right? When the interest rates are high, it basically means loans, for instance, are going to be charging you a high amount, right? So you can't borrow a lot of money to finance your expenditures there. So hence that negative relationship there, right? So hence, whenever you see interest rates going high, like in this case, then investment spending is expected to be low. You see, so organizations do not expand much under those circumstances. And then the opposite is true again. When the interest rates go low, we expect that there's going to be, we basically expect that the investment is going to be high. That's our expectations on that. So this is what is summed up there, investment and interest rates. But that's all that we need to know. So in terms of the chain of events, these are the arrows there. When the interests are going down, investment is going up. And then when the interests are going up, investment is going down. So this is something that you can also pretty much reason out there from what you are seeing there. Right, so the graphical representation now, right, the graphical representation now, if you're gonna put your interest rates against your investment spending, there's a negative relationship there. So that's why you see the slope of that curve of investment spending is negative, right? But bear in mind now that we've already spoken about the relationship between income and investment spending being positive, right? So keep that in mind. So let's talk about the equilibrium in the goods market. This we have done already there. So the goods market basically consists of consumption, right? Basically consists of all right, so the equilibrium in the goods market. So when we're talking about the goods market, as we have already done, we're looking at consumption, investment, and then government expenditure. This is under the circumstances where, say, we're a closed economy, right? We are basically going to be looking at those there. So equilibrium is when your Y is equal to Z. So basically, your expenditure is going to be equal to your income. Basically gives you that there. But let's leave that out. And then this we already did that side, so we can pretty much leave it out and rush straight to deriving the ISK. Right. So the relationship between interest rates and investment spending, we've already seen it's a negative relationship, right? And then again, the relationship between investment and Z, which is our consumption there, is known, right? Is known from the previous session in the goods market. We said whenever your investments go down, the Z curve goes down as well. So there's a reduction then on that Z curve, which is our expenditure, right? And then what about Y? Also so that the equilibrium income goes down as well. All right. So from that, again, you can already pick up that, okay, not even from that, we already spoke again that whenever your output or your income is going down, we said investments are also going down. So there's a positive relationship there. And then, of course, again, when your incomes are going down, your consumption is also going down through that induced, our consumption induced, our income induced consumption there. So those are the relationships that we see. So how do we derive now the IS curve? Right? How do we derive the IS curve? So the IS curve, we basically want to put our interest rate, right? We want to put our interest rates because we want to juxtapose the interest rates and the income, right? And then see that relationship in the goods market, right? We want to see that relationship in the goods market. Bearing in mind, first of all, the relationship between interest rates and investment spending, and then the relationship again between, say, investment and then consumption, and then income, right, which is the GDP in the real sense, right? We already know, we've already discussed that. So we're going to start off on, okay, diagram A is straightforward there. What happens on the interest rate is pretty straightforward there. So diagram A or figure A talks to us about interest rates, relationship between the interest rates and investment spending. So let's look at situation number one. If our interest rates increase from 0 to 1, we expect a movement along on that curve, right? So which means our investment, what's going to happen to our investments? It's going to reduce, right? It's going to move from 0 to 1 right there. So that's depicted there by the negative relationship, right? So let's assess now what we just described in figure A, in figure B, where now we are taking that and putting it in the goods market, right? What happens to the ZZ curve now when our investment is reducing, right? We expect that our ZZ curve is gonna shift down, right? That's what just happened there. So our ZZ curve moved from ZZ to ZZ1 as a result of a reduction in investment. So remember, we said earlier that whenever your investment spending goes down, that graph is supposed to go down. So that's what we are seeing there. So we are basically explaining the same thing but using different models, right? So now that we've seen the impact of a change or an increase in the interest rates on investment spending in figure A, we are going to now see the effect of a reduction in investment spending on figure B. The graph has gone down, right? We've seen that. So when that graph goes down, what happens to our income there on the y-axis? So our income is reducing. So we are seeing that there. So if you take that down now to figure C, we can already see that our income, since we are putting the interest rates now against income, we can see that our incomes are expected to reduce, right? But what has happened on the y-axis, we still maintain what's on I there. So our interests have basically moved from 0 to 1, right? So hence the IS curve is going to denote a negative relationship between the interest rates and the income, right? That's what's basically going to be depicted there. So another easier way to understand this, to put it plain, we know that there is a negative relationship between interest rates and investment spending, but a positive relationship between investment spending and income, right? So hence income and investment spending there are pretty much the same thing right there. They're pretty much the same thing. And then that I there is pretty much the same thing, right? So which means on point 1, or let's take for instance, sorry, on point A, which is our starting point, our Y, our income is there, it's given there as Y, and it corresponds with the interest rate I0. Then what happens when interest rate has moved up to I1, then the corresponding point there is A1, and then our level of income has gone down to YI. So that's basically how your IS curve is. So in notation, picking it up from the diagram there, you can basically see that whenever you increase your interest rates, what happens to your I, your investment spending? It goes down. Then what happens to your ZZ curve? It goes down. Then what happens to your Y? Your Y goes down, right? That's the basic, that's the basic explanation there.
Good afternoon, sir. Can I just take you back? I just joined,
No
I'm sorry. Yeah,
No.
because I don't want you to move forward or else I don't understand something. So your I represent your interest, right? And then your Y represent the investment. I told you I'm really blank with this module. And then how do, which alphabet represents income on this graph?
Right. Let's start again. You said our I represents what?
Interest.
Okay, yes, this little I is the interest. The one,
and then
yes.
the Y represents investment.
So the I again, this I, the big one. This one
Oh,
there.
Okay. It represents investment.
Capital letter I. And then
Okay.
Y, every time in economics, Y is income.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think I got it now. Thank you very much.
All right. So this, by the way, is so easy that you can literally, once you've mastered this, right, you can literally wake up anytime in the middle of the night and answer any question with regards to this. Sometimes the speed with which you'll be giving out these answers, they might even think you are guessing out these answers, but it's very straightforward. Once you think like an economist, you go straight into the model, then you know that you are good, you are straight to go, right? So we are done now with that Fig A, B, and C. So let's look at now how it needs to be plotted, because they might also bring this out, right? But it's basically what we've been discussing. So assuming the interest rate is I0, that's the starting point, so that little I. So it has a corresponding level of investment spending, right, according to the given investment schedule, right? But you don't even have to look at that, right? But in any case, there you have your I0, it's corresponding there with your I0 at the bottom. So it's corresponding with that level of investment spending there, right? Given an interest rate again of I0 with the level of investment spending of I0, the corresponding demand for goods in figure B is going to be ZZ there, right? So there you go in Fig B. So given the same there, you can basically go and then plot that, which is the first ZZ curve. So it's that ZZ curve given a level of investment spending, right? So which is a little bit higher, because we assume it's gonna go low, so we put it high there. And then the equilibrium point where our Z is equal to Y, so that's where it's crossing that 45-degree line there. So you go down straight there, you have your first Y there at the bottom, right? So that's the first assumption there. Then at this goods market equilibrium, the position in figure B, the corresponding equilibrium level of income, output and income is Y. So that's the one that's at the bottom there. Right, then by extending this equilibrium level of income Y with the dotted line to figure C, we can plot the first point on the IS curve. So we go right down, we extend it right down there. It's the same amount. So it's Y and Y. So that's the x-axis. So the x-axis on figure B and figure C are just the same. So you can pretty much put that there. Right, so that's done. And then the first point on our IS curve in figure C or in figure C is plotted at the intersection of Y, that's that Y at the bottom with the dotted line I0. So it's basically, so we are basically plotting this again. It's the same as plotting this, right? That corresponding Y0, sorry, I0, and then that other I0, which gives a corresponding level of Y there. Taking that Y down, then that's corresponding I0 there to your left. So it's basically the same point, right? It's that same equilibrium in the goods market now expressed in the IS model. All right, and then the first point on our IS curve is also indicated as point A because it corresponds with point A in fig B. That's indicating a goods market equilibrium right there. Right, then plotting A1 now, the next point, right? So let's assume now there's an increase in the interest rates. So a very good assumption is, let's say, if the interest rates have gone up, say as a result of right, the interest rates go up as a result of a contractionary monetary policy, we expect that the interest rates are going to go up. So suppose they've gone up now, according to our investment curve, the level is going to decrease from, so it's going to decrease from I0 to I1, right? So that's what we see there, that decrease there at that point, okay? Then what about in the goods market? The decline in investment spending is a decrease in the demand for goods, right? So our demand goes down now from ZZ to ZZ1, okay? We've done that. And then the shift in the demand for goods is equal to a decrease in investment, right? Which is as a result of the increase in interest rates. So at the initial level of income Y, supply exceeds demand, and there is an adjustment now to a lower level of output. So the decline in output and income is a multiple of a decrease in investment spending owing to the multiplier effect. So this is just explaining that downward shift there. So the goods market ultimately is going to reach A1 on fig 2. So that decrease there is going to take the equilibrium down to A1. Right. So you can then plot a corresponding A1 down there at the bottom, and then the corresponding interest rate right there. And then once you join those 2 points, it gives you the IS curve. It's that easy. All right. So at the new goods market level of A1, the corresponding level of income is Y1, then the decrease in equilibrium level of income from Y1 from Y to Y1 is equal to the multiplier times the change in the investment. So by extending equilibrium level of Y1 in fig B with a dotted line to C, now we can plot the second part there, and then the second point on our IS curve C is plotted there, and then the corresponding I1. So it's just a very long explanation of what we've discussed, right? It's just a long explanation of that. So at the end of the day, it's basically a negatively sloped curve, right? So note that the I in IS stands for investment, and then the S there stands for savings, right? And that's what it basically stands for. But we don't talk much in detail about that, how our investment is equal to savings. We don't deal with that much here in detail, right? So this is basically what's important here. Fix C, right? First of all, you need to know that there is a negative relationship. What is the IS curve? It basically gives you the different combinations in your goods market where your I and your Y are basically in equilibrium, right? So equilibrium basically in the goods market anyway is gonna be on any point there on that IS curve, is still equilibrium in the goods market, right? So it's the combinations between your interest and your income where the goods market is in equilibrium, basically that. So next up, we're going to be looking at, which is next week, right? We're going to be looking at the LM curve. We're going to be dealing with the LM curve. Okay, maybe we'll start off with the shifts in the IS curve, right? We're going to be dealing with the shifts, but just to give you a hint, anything that is exogenous, so anything that is not interest rates, that is not income, that is going to otherwise cause an increase or a decrease in our demand for goods in the goods market is basically gonna cause a shift there on that. All right. I don't